Shall we keep chatting or shall we get into it? I never know how to start these things. Do you just start naturally? Or
You've already started.
Oh, we've started.
Yeah, you've already started.
We're back live again.
Yes.
The aftermatch round. We're 4 episodes in, Beav.
Yes.
That's a win.
We haven't been cancelled yet. Mind you, you can't be cancelled if you're doing it yourself, can
That's
you?
true.
Yeah.
That's true. We're back. The aftermatch with Kirsten Beav. Come for the rugby, stay for the aftermatch. All the good stories coming your way yet again. But the first thing we need to address, it's the Oracle. You had our listeners and our viewers in an absolute spin on Friday and Saturday. I managed the social media pages. Thank you for keeping me busy because I had notifications just popping off on my phone with everyone following the round of boilovers. You called it last week. You didn't know what, but you just felt that there was a boilover coming. Well, thanks for jinxing the Hurricanes, the Chiefs, and the Blues.
Well, when you looked at it last week, it just felt like any one of those games could have gone that way. I didn't anticipate all of them happening, but I just felt somebody has to be tipped over here. And like the Blues, for example, I think people underestimated how good the Brumbies were against the Chiefs. They were outstanding against the Chiefs and weren't far away from beating the Chiefs, I thought. Sitting gun at Eden Park, without Hoskins, obviously half a game without Bodie. Is it that much of an upset? But then I guess the two on Saturday really got people.
They were wonderful. The two newest teams in Super Rugby that we have been, well, the Drua have always been there or thereabouts because they win games at home. We've been waiting for Moana to catch up and to really show something. For both of them to win on the weekend was pretty special. And to beat big teams. The Drua beating the Chiefs, who were undefeated.
Top of the table, undefeated.
Top of the table, undefeated. I don't care where you are, whether you're at home or not. The Chiefs still they were stacked with players.
Yes, they were.
And then Moana to beat the Hurricanes once again, who had a number of international players in there. No excuses.
No, and
they were both beaten and beaten well.
No, and to be honest with you, obviously, I talked to Moana, would do it the previous week. However, deep down, once you'd cut through all the Chiefs in me, I think
hard to get through that.
It's a lot to get through, but I think right down deep in my core, the Drua was the one that I was actually more inclined to think.
Oh, you just didn't want to say it. I said it. And look, I'll have you know, on the weekend, our tipping competition, our head-to-head rounds, you got 2, I got 6.
Excuse me?
You got 2 correct. You had an absolute shocker.
Yeah, well, like a lot of people think because I'm Waikato and Chiefs, I don't like the Blues, so I've got to support the Blues at times, so I've got to tip them every now and again.
Yeah, well, let's just have that be known.
Yes.
It was 6v2 in the total points. That was the 5 games of Super Rugby and 2 Opiki. Well, so I only got 1 wrong.
Well, the only reason I'm having to still do this is my multi-million-dollar multi.
Oh, you tried to put money on it. The upsets.
Came up 1 short. I got everything.
You're stupid.
I got everything.
You're so stupid. Why did you not go on the Crusaders? Why did you not go on them?
I went with the Reds with a point start. So I thought Crusaders could still win a tight one, but I think I had 12.5 points head start for the Reds. And yes, that's the reason I'm still sitting here today on episode 4 because I'm not a multimillionaire.
Well, thank God. Otherwise, I would have been looking for another co-host. Yeah. And it is a hard chair to fill, that one. It is a very hard chair to fill. Matt Tamua.
Yes.
I love this from him.
Brilliant.
Wallabies. Former Wallaby.
Former Wallaby.
Can't call him a goat because you'll be on my case again.
Well,
or just call him a former Wallaby.
I mean, the guy that just came in and taped up the floors was called a goat before. So,
he is a goat.
You are willy-nilly with it.
Production goat. But he tweeted, #New Zealand down to 4 teams. You remember for the last 5 years that all these New Zealanders, including this guy sitting right here, have been carrying on about getting rid of an Australian side.
Well, some have said 3 teams.
Aussie down to 4 teams. Well, Matt Tamua, after the first 3 games in Super Rugby, said one's got to go.
One's got to go.
Great chat.
And brilliant. And of course, in our own very overreacted Kiwi way, some people took it personally. I thought it was brilliant.
Well, if you're looking at bottom of the table from a New Zealand side, the Canes have to go.
Canes, get rid of the capital.
You're gone.
Yeah, sorry.
If it comes down to performance.
And if this continues,
the Blues will be gone too.
Yeah, if Matt starts tweeting New Zealand down to 3 teams, then Blues and Canes.
Blues and Canes would be no longer. Sayonara.
Can be the Upper North Island Chiefs. But no, brilliant text. But the good thing about it, if you take the funny tweet aside, is there's some confidence again in Australian rugby, and the fact is, you've probably looked at a lot of Australian teams over the last sort of decade, and when they've run out on the field, you could probably see in their eyes that, we're here, but we're probably not going to win. And like that was the thing. I couldn't tip the Brumbies last week. Even though I thought they went so well against the Chiefs, I couldn't tip them because it seems like they always come to Auckland and Eden Park with confidence in quarters and semi-finals over the last few years and lose, and sometimes lose horribly. So I couldn't for the life of me see, but clearly there's a confidence now in some of these Australian teams, which is what you need when you run out on the field.
Here's another one that you couldn't pick last week. That was those Tars.
No.
Because of the box kicks, you said put the box kicks away and you'll pick them. Well, you pick the Force, I pick the Tars.
Yes.
Look, I don't mean to trample you while you're down because the Oracle didn't have the greatest weekend, aside from calling a few boilovers here and there. But
yes,
this is how good the competition is in 2025. The Waratahs were wooden spooners, bottom of the rung last year. They are the only unbeaten side in Super Rugby after 4 rounds.
Yeah, and there's no doubt that they've done brilliantly from the Rebels.
Without Suoli, by the way.
Yes, I know. He's still to return. They've done brilliantly as far as who they've got on board, thanks to the Rebels now not being a part of Super Rugby. So they've got, all Wallaby front row, and they've got a bit more beef up front. And, of course, Callaway and the likes have joined. So it's a very good-looking squad. But, yeah, they are chipping away quite nicely. And, some people talk about this team and that team having a good draw, soft draw, what have you. I think now we're starting to realise it doesn't matter who you've got. You just have to win what's in front of you. And once you get, 3 wins, 4 wins, 5 wins on the trot, they're going to be tough to peg back.
How brutal is the Blues schedule, though?
Yeah, it's a big fortnight.
Theirs is massive, and it has been the last month as well. But your front just thought, they'll just come back in like they were last year. Tough draw. A lot of injuries. You now add Bowden Barrett to that list as well. But it sounds like they'll have Dalton's back. Stephen Pedalfeta coming back.
Huge.
As well. But two big inclusions.
But if you look at the Blues, and I know so much has been said about the defending champions sitting where they are at the moment, when have they gone well this year? It's when Hoskins has played.
Bodie.
And Bodie's played.
At 10.
That ain't happening for another couple of weeks. This week, they go to the Tron against a team that was disappointing in the weekend themselves, who have a bit of attitude.
Who would have got an absolute earful.
Yes, the review wouldn't have been pretty for the Chiefs. And the week after that, if they get through that, or if they don't get through that, they've then got to turn it around against the Crusaders at Eden Park. And the Crusaders have proven year after year, Eden Park holds no fear.
Yeah, tough.
Very, very tough. But
you're not an Auckland basher.
No, I'm not. But I will say, because having been in a position...
You do live in the super city.
That's because some clown of a mayor decided to incorporate our rates into his little pot. But no, what I was going to say is, having been in teams where you've dropped 3 games on the trot, dropped 4 games on the trot, Super Rugby can be brutal as far as getting yourself out of a slump.
We're nearly a third of the way through.
Yep.
Round 5 this week, 16 rounds overall. We're nearly a third of the way through the competition.
That's why, if we look at the Blues in particular,
they're in danger of not making the 6. Remember, it's 6 now.
It's 6.
It's not a joke.
No,
it's a 6-team playoff.
You've got to win more than half your games.
Yeah.
And as I said, Chiefs, Crusaders is a big fortnight for them.
Massive fortnight. Okay, let's talk about a few things. Chiefs in Fiji. Are Fijians the greatest athletes in the world?
When you look at a few of them, you'd have to say yes.
What about Logani Masi's try? That was one of the most special tries I have seen. It could have easily been a Chiefs try down the other end.
And when you've got to consider that if you didn't watch the game, you just saw the highlights, you thought, there's a nice try. The boys were running around and there was water splashing up to their knees. It was terrible conditions.
Shocking.
It was shocking. It was a monsoon before kickoff. It was phenomenal. And for him to pick it up, full pace, fingertips, beat a couple of Chiefs, chip kick. And because
it was a beautiful thing to watch.
Oh, because you're whipping it home and then you think, surely the bounce it up perfectly. It was as good as it gets.
Yeah, but also the guy that's been on the wing for the last few weeks that went back to fullback, that guy's so sensational as well. Had to make room for Ravel Tamanda, one of their best for the last 4 years as well. Just across the board,
yes,
the athletes, the athleticism and the skill set that these big guys possess, I just don't know if there is any nation in the world that has athletes like this.
No, when you think about if you clipped up the Druids tries from the first 4 weeks of this competition, they are phenomenal.
No one else can score them.
No.
Not the way they score them.
And I think a little bit of a special mention, shout out to Armstrong Ravula.
Yeah, you like this kid?
Well, I do, because for all the reasons that you're talking about right now, you imagine knowing that you've got all that arsenal out there, you've got all that danger, but in your head, you know, well, my job's not to get us in trouble. It's a wet day here. We can't just do what we do, being Fijians, and think we're playing sevens. I've got to kick. And unfortunately, I'm going to upset my mates out there, but I've got to kick for corners and stuff like that. And I thought he did such a good job controlling that game. And for all the highlights that you've mentioned, he's the reason they won, because he was, out of the 30 guys on the field, he was the one I thought, along with probably Lamani at halfback for him, who had his head screwed on, realised he was playing in a monsoon and kicked for corners.
Why did the Chiefs not realise this?
Don't know.
Why did they not realise this?
Considering, you know...
It's not their first time to Fiji.
Well, not their... they're a group of Waikato boys, Taranaki boys, Counties boys. They've grown up on some pretty rough fields and wet winters. And I was just staggered at how much we played, how much the Chiefs played. You know, like...
Can't take it out of them.
On days like that, the board didn't need to be going phases. You just kick it down there. There's no such thing as a bad kick. When guys can't run such a heavy field, you just kick it down there and you tackle and you wait for your opportunities. And I think the Chiefs, they took probably 35 minutes to realise that let's just kick from Cortez Latimer at 9, as opposed to throw it back to Jake and put him under pressure, try and put it to Ford's hands and then kick. Sean Stevenson came on and the only thing he did was catch the ball, kick it. And it was like, oh, now we've got some rugby IQ out there, because he could see what was happening in the field position stakes.
People almost didn't think that was an upset because the Drua are notoriously hard to beat in Fiji. Is it a mindset thing? Why are they so hard to beat in Fiji? Do they play more with the ball when they're in Fiji than they, does the travel have a factor when they're not at home? Because you don't think that the conditions, the heat, sometimes the wet, you don't think that actually has a factor. So why are they so much better in Fiji, and why can these teams not go over there and beat them? They've never lost a match at Lautoka.
Well, you went with it. I was in Napier, and it was hotter than Fiji would have been. And they took the Hurricanes to the absolute end of it and just lost out. No, I think if you look at teams, for probably the first year or two, New Zealand teams took as an opportunity to rotate players in and out.
The Chiefs did that the weekend, somewhat.
Somewhat. Not to the extent that other teams have in the past and been tripped up. But when you look at it, you're going over to Fiji, and they don't do tours. The South African tour is no longer. So all of a sudden you've got a little mini tour. And you go to Fiji, you might go there 3 days before. You're going and staying in Dinado, I think they were. It's a holiday resort. And suddenly you're taking guys who maybe a bit inexperienced. They're like, oh, how good is this? I'm by the pool. I've got the pina colada. Well, not probably pina colada, maybe a mocktail. But they're enjoying life. And then,
it's not a holiday.
It's not a holiday. And then you fall into comfort, and then you go, oh, okay, now I'm out in front of a packed stadium of Fijians. The Drua are growing an arm and a leg. Every 10 minutes that goes by, they're close. They're starting to believe. I just think that mentally, you've got to be quite mature to go over there, put all that aside, and have good leaders that say, boys, we're not here on holiday. We've got to go out there and win. And maybe some teams that go over there with these inexperienced teams, because a lot of Kiwi teams go over and leave some of the big boys at home. Maybe that's why they struggle up there. It can't be seen as a holiday, but yet you can see how you could slip into it.
And a couple of their key leaders, Luke Jacobson not there, Damien McKenzie not there. So are these the mature types that you're talking about that would say, get rid of that mocktail pina colada, stop lazing by the pool with your oil on and climbing up these palm trees?
Well, in Damien McKenzie, you've got the Chiefs IQ.
Yeah.
So he gets out there and goes, right, we're kicking this. And in Luke Jacobson, you've got who I would say is, and I know the word tough is generic, but he's their toughest forward. He's the one that's going to go and put a hit in or go and clean ruck. So without those sorts of guys, I think you can get a little bit caught in the headlights. And you had to see it. In the second half, the Drua started to believe they were going to win. And all of a sudden, if there was a loose ball on the ground, who was first there? It was the Drua. So, no, I just think it's another case of Kiwi teams up there few inexperienced guys up there, and this week in particular, with the weather, they just weren't smart.
It happens every year. They beat a New Zealand team every year, and then all the other New Zealand teams go, oh, that's a wake-up call.
Yeah.
We can't.
We won't send the young boys.
Exactly. It happens every year. We've talked about this for the last 4 years, and it's still happening. They're saying, oh, we can't take them lightly anymore. You haven't been able to since the beginning.
No. But to be fair, if the Chiefs are going to drop one, and the Chiefs, they took coaches some
They
time,
like it to happen.
They like a wake-up call.
Why?
Well, for the same reasons that the boys might have been lounging around by the pool, it just might prick them a little bit and go, right, we haven't won the title yet. You can't take shortcuts, because it's the first time the Chiefs hadn't carried hard, cleaned hard. Compared to what they'd put on for the first 3 weeks, it was a noticeable drop-off.
Okay, well, let's stay in Fiji. Last week it was a love affair to Ireland. Shout out to TRPVC, Trevor from Ireland.
Hope you're still watching.
Never had any comments back from Trevor, but if you ever want to comment on the program, you know what to do. Post in the comments, like, subscribe on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, everywhere you get your podcast from. Let's stay in Fiji.
Yes.
The love affair for Fiji. Who are the greatest Fijian athletes that you've had the pleasure of playing with or watching growing up?
So growing up, obviously, fell in love being a counties boy. We had JONAH on one wing, of course, who was the man of the round. And then the other guy who was equally as good and devastating was Joeli. And he was local. And you might go to, for example, your local KFC in Pukekohe. You might bump into Joeli. You might see him.
Did you bump into him at KFC?
Oh, yeah, well, amongst other places.
You just run into these stars.
Well, you'd go and watch club rugby, and Joeli would come play your local team. So love Joeli, and then obviously later in life through some of the other Fijian boys who I'll mention shortly, got to know him and know him well. And again, real shame he's no longer with us. So Joeli growing up. Also, when I was growing up, talk about playing with ones. From about the age of 9 or 10, used to go up against this certain tall, skinny second five from Weymouth, Jolly Rokocoko, of course, who at second five, I know he made his name as a winger.
Yeah.
He was the most,
How tall was he at second five from Weymouth?
How tall he is now?
Just
6'2", 6'3".
Gangly,
So just stood out like a
second
beacon.
five.
And honestly, if you told me then he was going to be a winger, I'd have gone, oh, that's a waste, because the hands on him were just so silky, even this 10-year-old.
So when did he transition?
Once he came up to Auckland and made the NPC squad. He left us from counties under 15s and went to chase the money in Auckland. And then they positioned him into a winger. And he was the world's best winger for a time, without a shadow of a doubt. Joe was. And I guess then Rupeni was also one that I love watching. Then got to play Rupeni against for Fiji, New Zealand A.
You played against Rupeni.
Played against Rupeni.
How did that go?
Well, Rupeni was probably past his best at the time, but he was still quick enough to get me running down the sideline, take my head off in front of the embankment there at Suva International, much to the delight and cackling of the Suva locals. It would have been a 12-week suspension. Now, I don't even think I got a penalty out of that. I think it was
good on you, Rupeni.
I think it was back to the scrum. But honestly, when he was at the peak of his powers playing for the Blues with Joe, tough to say there was anyone better. So devastating. I remember the World Cup in Australia. When was that? 2003. For Fiji, he was like a one-man show. Almost got them through, I think, to the quarters. And then talking Fijians, I can't go past my old roommate, my schoolmate, my man, my kava drinking friend on Tuesday nights, none other than Sitiveni Sivivatu.
Your chicken curry connoisseur.
Yes.
Which people, by the way, they voted 86% would have picked Sitiveni's chicken curry over your Halla's white bread and sausage.
And fair enough too, but City, for me, it's tough to say he's the best I've ever played with, but I'd say he's the most talented and breathtaking I've ever played with, if you could have that category, because when he was on, and some days he chose to be on and some days he chose, might not have been his day, but when he was on, he was like nothing else. Literally, he could make time stand still when he had the ball. And you could see in the opposition eyes when he had the ball. I remember he put about 4 tries one night on the Blues down at FMG there. And he was literally holding the ball and you could almost hear him sort of giggling as he was about to step someone and score under the post. When he was on, he was like nothing else. And he was only ever as quick as he needed to be. No one knew how quick he was because he wouldn't run fast, but he always ran faster than the guy chasing him, and just enough. So Sitiveni, without a shadow of a doubt, my best.
One of the best.
Yeah.
Okay, well, the reason why I bring this up,
Yes.
that Fijians, some of the greatest athletes in the world, and you've just mentioned 4 pretty incredible rugby players.
Yep.
So the Kelsey brothers,
Yes.
the big NFL dogs, one's going out with Taylor Swift, Travis, and then there's older brother Jason Kelsey. They've got this podcast, and they were getting stuck into rugby players. They had this, and we'll post this video, why rugby players could never make it in the NFL. And 2 of their responses: rugby is more physical soccer, and there's no skill in rugby. Your response to the Kelseys?
Well, look, I mean, be great if we could collab one day. Be great for ratings. Physical soccer's a bit of an insult, isn't it? Would you suggest physical soccer?
Physical soccer.
Physical soccer. And the skill factor. Look, I don't know enough about NFL to know the skill level, but I think I did see the clip. Was it Jason?
Jason.
He literally said, well, there's no skill in what I do. I just...
He's funny.
Yeah, he's clever, but yeah, I'd probably, I guess they've seen, because...
Louis Rees-Zammit, who used
trained
to...
with Kansas City.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this is where I sort of thought, is this where they're getting at? This is Travis's former
teammate.
Squad mate.
Yeah. And then obviously we've seen a couple of NFL guys, NRL guys go and make...
Jordan Mailata, the big one though.
Yes. But then he's probably not the skillful one as, say, a Jared Hayne was or what have you. So I guess they're just so different games.
But if you're looking at it and you just think athlete-wise, maybe the ones that are more skillful, like the Jared Haynes of the world, they're the ones that can't transition as easily.
But just maybe everywhere in America.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But what about the big guys like the Tamaiti Williams, the Jordan Mailata equivalents that are ginormous with those massive mitts that can catch the ball? Like, what's Tamaiti Williams' dimensions? He is a monster. Yeah, surely he's the kind of person that you would look at and go, come here, son.
Well, he would be the one that would be similar to Jordan Mailata, wouldn't he? Him would offer. Big offer would have to be close in dimensions. Yeah. And he's not obviously a Kiwi, but a Wallaby would be Will Skelton.
Yeah. Oh. He
would surely be the closest that you could get to. What are they called? Defensive lines and
are they linesmen?
Linesmen. We'll just call them linesmen.
Linesmen.
They would.
Hey, you don't know anything about rugby, the Kelseys, so don't expect us to.
Isn't that the tennis umpires?
What are they called? The linebackers? Running backs? Oh, I don't know.
Maybe move on before we lose all those NFL watchers we've got.
But there are a few suggestions.
Yes.
If you're looking for pure size. Because if you're looking at athletes, you'd say someone like a Rico Ioane or whatever.
Rico, Cole Clark.
But they don't make the transition as easily.
Well, not when you look at Valentine Holmes and Jared Hayne that have done it and
when
got
you
close.
Look at the guys that they're coming up against who have played the sport since they were 3 years old, it would be very, very tricky to come in. But for people that have the size, that are just like shoving people back. I'm thinking the Blindside movie here. That's what I'm thinking.
Well, I'm just thinking rugby players would be like terrified by the fact that, like, you see our wonderful books here.
Yes.
I think their playbooks are about
800 pages.
800 pages, and a rugby player, sometimes I used to get pissed off with my halfbacks when they used to forget the line out drive box kick call, and that's one word.
How many plays do you have in rugby going into a game?
Okay, so you might have 4 or 5 lineouts. Sorted. And I know, and amongst that, the forwards will have different shapes that they've got a dummy fake here or whatever, but I always didn't have to worry about that. But then you might have 3 or 4 sequences. Yeah. And there might be an option or 2 off that. But look, you're talking 8. 8 going into a game. Fit it on him.
One piece of paper. Yeah. And these NFL playbooks from these coaches are literally the size, and you've got to know every single one of them.
Though. They must narrow it down.
What if they say to you, okay, Beaver, page 187, D3, that's what we're running right now. Get out there.
That's when you go, got it all on your arm, don't you?
Every single one of them.
Don't they have it in their earpiece?
That's the coaches.
See, Rusty Erasmus ahead of his time. Remember when he had it in his Cheetahs Boys headgears? And the glowing lights from the coach's box.
Yeah, he's brought that back. Just before we move on from the Fijians,
yes,
I just wanted to touch on one other thing. Because my husband, our producer.
Our producer.
Our producer, who was watching
Our foreman, cameraman.
He does everything. He's a goat. He was watching on the weekend and he was suggesting how good the Fijians are at kicking across the board.
Yep.
We've mentioned this guy's name before on the podcast, Mick Byrne.
Yep.
Mickey Byrne, who's now the Fijian head coach, was the coach of the drill for the first 3 seasons, used to be the All Blacks skills coach, and his background was AFL in Australia.
Sydney Swan.
If you needed to know a little bit more about Mickey Byrne, this guy has unbelievable pedigree.
Yep.
Is that why the Fijians are good kickers? Did Mickey Byrne's influence have something to do with that? Have you seen it?
You have to be huge influence. The fact that, in my opinion, you've got obviously he's now head coach of the whole shebang, but you've got the best kicking coach in the world, or who a bit, I guess, the pioneer of kicking coaching, as a resource for you. And there's no doubt that Mickey would have been pumping them into the techniques and what have you. And also, I think, Kirst, Mick Byrne's arrival, plus the fact that you've got the Drew arrival, and 15s has now taken a lot bigger standing in Fiji, where it used to be 7-7-7s and we'll put 15 guys together for a World Cup. There's so much more importance, and I guess, there's so much more success based out of the 15s program now, that kicking has been something that I'd probably identified we have to be better at. And, they've got, as I say, the world's best there to teach them that. He's obviously got to worry about the whole game now with being a head coach of Fiji. But without a shadow of a doubt, the kicking from the Fijian wingers, fullbacks, obviously we've talked about Armstrong, Ravula, it's improved out of sight.
How did he help your game?
Well, a good thing about Mick, and thankfully, if anyone's had the displeasure of having to watch me play, is he wasn't worried about how it looked. He was just worried about being effective. So there was just a couple of key things that, from his background of, I guess, AFL, where everyone kicks perfectly, that you just needed to get across the line. So you could look gangly and uncoordinated like said person here, but as long as you did these things and kept it simple, then you could get the effectiveness, I guess. And he was very good at that. He could mould anything to the player.
Are you talking about place kicking here?
Oh, both
So
place kicking.
what are those key things that he was telling you?
Oh, just where you finish. So like in most sports, if you finish towards the target, then that's where the ball's going to go. And, like if you look at guys who swing their legs this way or swing their legs that way, they can look pretty or what have you. But as long as everything important is going towards targets, and he's got drills and that breaks it all down. So I'd imagine that's probably been a lot of why now the Fijians are technically a lot better kickers.
So you spent many a Wednesdays.
Days off with Mickey.
Many a days off where everyone else was going up the Eiffel Tower or touring the Guinness factory.
I didn't miss out on the Guinness factory. That was at night times. But
you were spending days on the paddock with Mickey Byrne.
Yep.
And he was running you through all sorts, not just place kick. Because I don't know, I think our place kicking across the board on the weekend from New Zealand teams was poor.
Yeah, I
know, and
you have your good days and your bad days, goal kicking.
It was just a bad weekend for New Zealand goal kickers.
I mean, you could look at most,
which is so important in international rugby.
It is, but you look at the boys' stats overall.
Damien's got great stats.
Great stats. Like
Pellegrini was really impressive.
Very impressive. And who's Godfrey was kicking for the Canes. Young fella, and that's the thing. You don't want to come in on someone's goal kicking when they're young, because they're still trying to get their head around everything, and it's more pressure. And he wants to probably be goal kicking, but you don't want that to be affecting the rest of his game. So it is a skill that can affect the rest of your game. But I think they're always going to have their days.
Let's talk Moana Pacifica then, since I've mentioned their first 5. Patrick Pellegrini, who started for the first time for Moana this week.
Yep.
His background, Tongan international, played for them at the 2023 Rugby World Cup. Is an Australian with Tongan heritage. Grew up in Australia in Sydney-sider.
Yes.
Playing Shoot Shield, New South Wales, and didn't ever make it in Super Rugby. Went across to the UK on his OE and ended up playing in the championship there, I believe for Coventry. People will correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm happy to be proven wrong. And then got the call from Moana, and they said, do you want to play Super Rugby? He said, it's always been a dream of mine. He wanted to come back closer to home, answer the call, has come across, absolutely loving the environment, full of confidence, and we saw that on the weekend. He was the best first 5 on display in round 4. You said a little comment. Is he the one the Wallabies let slip?
Well, I mean,
is he what they could be after in terms of a first five? What did you see from this guy?
Well, it's easy for us to say now because he's, as you said, he was the best first five probably on display over the weekend. However, I mean, it's all good and well to say, oh, geez, how'd you let him go? But he certainly has, again, like Armstrong and Ravula, controlled the game. When things needed to be done, when field position was needed to be sort of achieved, he was able to get it. He has got wonderful creativity. Like when you look at a lot of rugby now, there's all these systems and there's pods and guys are just playing sort of out the back of that because that's what we've trained all week. And he can do all that, obviously. But the great thing about Pellegrini is once it starts breaking up, that's when he's at his best. When you get guys shooting out of the line or if there's a turnover or there's counter-attack opportunities, where the defensive lines are a bit broken, he looks up and just sees opportunities. And he's got wonderful footwork. He's a little guy, which I think helps a little bit these days. Obviously, it doesn't help when big guys are running at you, but it helps a little bit because there is now, I guess, a bit of trepidation around how do you defend little guys because you can't go anywhere near here or else you're going to be penalised. Sorry if you're listening, I was just touching my neck. I've got to remember that, Kirst.
I thought I just heard your stomach.
But and then so you've just got to... You've got to work out that he has got such nimble feet, he's going to sit a lot of people on their heels. And when he's got people on their heels, then he's already got them. So you look at Pellegrini last 2 weeks, I know he came off the bench, but he's been able to get little weak shoulders, he's been able to make a few little line breaks, get offloads, and just his composure, as I said, because both games, he brought them back from 21 points down against the Landers. We were there was a wind going one way, he used that well, he kept the corners. And then when things were starting to get a little bit dicey against the Canes, and the Canes were showing that they were going to come back, again, he made some really, really good decisions. And absolutely, there's somebody who Moana can base a team around and be confident that, right, we've got somebody who's going to control us if we lay a platform for him.
So you don't think that Wallabies would be looking at someone like this? Because 3 years stand down, he would be eligible to play if he doesn't play for Tonga in the meantime.
Yes.
At the 2027 home Australian World Cup. What a story that would be. A guy that never made it into Super Rugby in Australia had to go overseas.
Yep.
Doing his OE, probably working in a pub or something like that in the
Yes.
UK, just living a great life and learning his craft.
Yeah, I've got no doubt that the Wallabies will be trying to work out how can we there'll be a phone call being made. I mean, another side of me is like, well, let's leave him for Tonga and let's have Tonga be more competitive. And, you know, if we chuck him in there and maybe his mate that's on the wing or I'm sure we'll get to. But, like, there's that aspect to it. But, of course, the Wallabies, they know he was born and raised there. They'll be looking at him and thinking, well, could we add to our stocks here a little?
Exactly. I mean, you can always do with another one, can't you?
Well,
I mean, how many first fives do you need for a World Cup? History tells you 4, at least.
Yeah, well, we've been over this before. Just pick the right ones, Ted.
So pick Patrick.
But yeah,
we don't even know who the coach of the Wallabies is yet.
Not for World Cup, no, we won't. But whoever that is, I'm sure that they're just trying to work out because it's such an important position. And what he's showing at the moment, 2-3 games into his Super Rugby career, with a team that is notoriously on the back foot, then huge impact so far.
We're going to talk about Moana Pacifica's transformation in the space of a week, which that was the most impressive performance of the weekend for me because for 40 minutes they did it without Ardie Savea.
Yep.
And at halftime, if you were anyone, you would have thought, oh, there's no way they win this game when Ardie didn't walk back out onto the field after that. What has happened in the space of a week?
Well, the guy I've just been talking about has had a huge impact, Pellegrini, but also we were there against the Landers, and as brave as it was, you thought it was just that. You thought, that's a brave effort. They're starting to look a bit tired here. Can they keep this intensity? Blah, blah, blah. Within a week, they looked like and it's obviously just my imagination, but they looked fitter. But the game was just as intense, probably more intense against the Canes, ball and play, but they just looked strong and they looked more controlled. That was the big thing for me. The game against the Landers was a bit frantic, turnovers, and they essentially cost them the game against the Landers. But they just looked so controlled against the Hurricanes. Again, Tana would have had the opportunity to show them the Highlanders video and say, look, we were good here, but this is what's letting us down, and just really ram that home. And it looked like they took all those lessons on board and were just so much more disciplined. And when I used to say discipline, not as far as penalties, but just discipline with the ball. Once they got in those try-scoring opportunities, that field position, they were ruthless with their efficiency. And when they've got a guy at 10 who was doing what he was doing, as I said, when you can control things, you're conserving energy. And I just wonder, they just look so much stronger and fitter physically than they had the previous week. And dare I say, having a miracle floating around is not bad either.
Love that story and love that guy.
He reminds me of Murray from the Drua.
Yeah.
As far as when he hits the ball, you have to really want to get in front of him to tackle him. If you're half in or out on the whole defence side of things, you ain't stopping him because he just runs like you've got to stop him.
You know he's the kind of guy that the All Blacks would have loved to have taken. I'm so glad that he is playing for his homeland, Samoa. He's a born and bred Samoan. He didn't grow up in New Zealand or Australia. He grew up in the islands, was picked out of the islands for this team. It is a wonderful story. That's what the team was there for.
Well, I didn't realise the combine that they picked him out of. Like, literally, come and show us what you've got.
He was literally picked out of club in Samoa.
That's brilliant.
So cool. And look at what he's doing in Super Rugby. He's one of the standouts.
Well, he's devastating.
Yeah.
That sort of loose forward doesn't come along that often. His ball carrying, as I said...
It's not you, though. This guy's been doing it for 3 years.
It's remarkable. But now he's got a team that's benefiting from it, that he's got a platform.
Yeah.
They've got a stronger platform that they can get on the back of.
Something else that caught my attention over the weekend, the wonderful crowds that have been showing up in Albany. We talked about it last week, this $10 kids ticket deal that they've got going on. But the black and white blazers, the black and white that you know very well. Did you used to rock one of those blazers? If you don't know what we're talking about, Wesley College, people.
Yes.
One of the most famous schools in Auckland. What's the old boys' honours roll?
Well, it's not in Auckland, it's counties, it's Pirata.
Okay, well, anyway, tell me what the honours board looks like.
Jonah.
Just Jonah.
Wow, Jonah.
Does he hold every single record at the school?
There is a story out there amongst the students there that even if you were to break any of his athletic records...
He's not moving.
No, a couple of seconds slow. No, so obviously Jonah...
That would be only right.
Jonah... Hosking's dad, Wasaki, Reece Duggan, I'm going to miss someone, but Sitiveni, the Kepu, so it's a Kopi Kepu, obviously a 100-game Wallaby. Big Carl was after me. There's been plenty, and I know I'm missing some, but it's... It was quite,
Was it nice seeing them?
It was brilliant.
So some of the Wesley boys, who you thought must have been some of the boarders, were taken from the complex to go and watch the Moana Pacifica game at Albany. They were dressed up in their number ones. They were getting involved. Black and white, look lovely. And they got to head out there for an excursion.
Yes.
Did it bring back memories? What was it like? Because you got to go to Wesley for your final year at high school.
Yeah, well, funny enough, we actually won the top 32 final, the old national championship, the Nike competition at North Harbour, and the whole school got bussed there. So there's probably about 300 there that night, and they're all there again in their blazers. That would have been the boarders who would have been said, right, we can get you to North Harbour. Who's coming out? Well, they might have been told you're going. It was really nice. Moana's playing a game in Pukekohe, which is no more than 5 minutes from the front gate of Wesley in a couple of weeks. I'd imagine the whole school will be there. But yes, seeing the young lads there. I'm trying to think who of the current crop in Moana. There'll definitely be some old boys in there from Wesley. So yes, seeing the boys all there was beautiful.
Was it special for you to go to that school?
It was. It's as I say, what was the roll? 350.
So it's a small school.
Very small school. Most of them Polynesian boys from the islands. Or from the churches in South Auckland. So it's a very unique school. I was predominantly in with the Fijian crew, which was Sitiveni, Tomasi Sungeta and the likes. And if I didn't want to go to a class, I always knew that I could just go and hang in their dormitory because they would be there. After the first term, there wasn't a whole lot of schooling done for those boys in particular. No, very special place. Obviously, the heritage, as I say, Jonah's the biggest name there, and I know a lot of it's been cut up now in subdivisions because it's based on a farm, but the school's still there and still in existence. And hopefully, Leslie Vinakolo's in charge of the rugby there at the moment,
Yes.
and I saw him on Friday, so hopefully the rugby there is going to come back to its glory.
Now, just going back to the records that Jonah holds all of for the entire school for eternity and beyond.
Yes.
You yourself were quite the record holder at Wesley College and
Yep.
within the Auckland region.
800 metre, yes.
Yeah, 800 metre. I imagine there wouldn't have been that many good at the 800 metre at Wesley, so you might have actually got on the board for once.
Look,
they would have been more short, sharp distance.
Real sad story there. Due to a stress fracture at the time of athletics, I couldn't
You
go
would
and get
still
myself.
hold that record
I
now.
couldn't go and get myself a Wesley 800 metre record. No.
Oh, SR Donald would still be top of the list.
Yeah, I actually don't think the 800 makes the.
They don't bother.
They don't bother.
They don't bother. It's
100
60 metre, 100 metre, 200.
Max out at 100 and 200.
That's all
Shot
they
put. Yeah, whatever Jonah did.
Okay, well, you mentioned him, Kyron Tamoifalau. So this is Moana Pacifica's winger, and if you've seen him, this kid makes you stand up.
Yeah.
He gets you off your seat. He is just a kid. He's only 21.
Yes.
He also has played for Tonga at the last Rugby World Cup as a 17-year-old. So he was a teenager playing. Born in New Zealand,
Yep.
schooled in the Marlborough region, but never really made the New Zealand age grade systems, which is why he obviously pledged his allegiance to Tonga. But he said he's always dreamed of being an All Black. He grew up in New Zealand. Is he someone, from what you've seen over the last few weeks, and I think he's like top of the try scoring list in
Yep.
Super Rugby right now, and this is in a team who's only won one game, don't forget.
Yes.
Is he someone that you could potentially see in a black jersey? Does he fit the mould of an All Blacks winger?
Well, I don't think there's, apart from being outstanding, I don't think there's such a mould that you need to fit. You know, like he's a different physique to a lot of them. He is, as you say, he's a skinnier, taller version. But when he moves, like it is
Speed.
It is
That's your
speed.
number one.
You can't coach it. But he does it without slowing down. Like his change of direction has been really impressive. He's somebody, we talked about Pellegrini and his confidence. You just mentioned, was he 20 or 21? Like he's rocking around at the moment with a level of confidence that he wants the ball. And for a 21-year-old, and he's going up against some pretty decent names in the game. Like, I mean, he was up against Naholo in the weekend and
Outplayed him.
And then previously, we haven't played the Blues yet, but you know he's been up against some pretty big stars, and he just continues to do an outstanding job. For me, it's just the change of direction at pace, and of course, if he keeps going on the trajectory he is, then you know I know he's played for Tonga, and again, it'd be great to see these island teams continue to keep their own and get strength from guys wanting to come through, as opposed to guys who have done their days with All Blacks or Wallabies, then gone back to. It'd be great if we live in a world where they come through together and then take them to be a power of themselves.
Which is what Tana Umaga is trying to achieve at Moana, isn't he? So, Jersey Watch.
Yes.
Taking a look at a certain position, as we've done every week. We've done halfbacks now. We've done second fives. We've done bolters. If we look at the wingers, top two wingers in New Zealand right now, would he be one of them?
He would be if he was eligible. Yep, he would be well and truly there. I think Sivu, and look, we are doing our Jersey Watch very much on form.
On form. So if you're picking an All Blacks duo, 11 and 14, who would be on form from Super Rugby the first 4 rounds?
Well, Sivu.
Yeah.
So he's
61 tries in Super Rugby, just sitting behind TJ Perenara and Julian Savia.
Of course.
He's 4 away, I think. He'll break that this year.
So Sivu right now, consistently and at the weekend, just he would have to be one off. And then you could have a look at them. The only thing, I've had to rule 2 out because of the monsoon in Fiji. So Narawa and Leroy
Gone.
They're gone, but only because of what happened in Fiji over the weekend. So then you look around, and it's probably just Talia at the moment if it was on pure form.
He's doing enough for you?
Yeah. Yep. Obviously, very good against the Canes.
One try.
When they got the job done. Well, no, he's been doing enough for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's all we need.
But there is some others who are really your tangatau's of a word.
Yes.
Who are starting to pop their heads up, so to speak. But I think if you use that phrase that you guys often use, what's that phrase you guys use in media world? That body of work? Is that
You talk about the body of work.
the body of work? Then I think Talia still has his nose in front. But Narawa, for me,
His special mention.
he's a very honourable mention.
An
Very
honourable mention.
And if he hadn't have played at a monsoon over the weekend, he may have been partnering Sivu.
Well, good news because he'll be back in Hamilton this weekend. So look out.
Dry, hard track, and look out, it's an All Black winger audition again.
Yeah, how is it? It is Amoni Narawa up against Caleb Clark, Mark Talia, and
Leroy will probably be there, I'd say.
will he? It's going to be interesting to see what happens with. Look, we presume Damien McKenzie's going to be available for that match because I do not think he'll miss that derby.
Well, you know who else might be available?
Who?
Well, he's available. Sean Stevenson's
Yeah,
back.
he is.
Yeah,
so what do they do there?
That's going to be the dilemma.
Damien's back to 15. Shooters on the bench.
I'd probably put Damien at 10, Shooter at 15.
Okay.
If I was in
thought so.
charge. If I
We
was
thought
in
so.
charge. Yeah.
Look, we've mentioned this, the big fella's name so many times today, and we haven't yet got to it. The JONAHs, of
Yes.
course, round 4, our player of the round.
And we'll apologise to our Australian listeners here and Fijian listeners and Moana listeners.
Yeah, so
No, Moana's included because Artie's on a point.
yes, so how are we doing this? It's just people in the New Zealand conference. That's what
Again-
you're saying.
Again, this is something we should have discussed earlier. No. I think this still stands.
Okay, so
Yes.
let's run over it. Our JONAH Awards for our player of the round. After 3 rounds, Damien McKenzie has a single point.
Here's a point.
Timothy Tavatavanawai has a point.
Yes.
Artie Savia has a point.
They're all first equal.
All first equal.
Yes.
Now, does one of those 3 add to their points and one push ahead of the others? Or do we add someone new in
Well-
the JONAHs round 4?
Well, funny you say that, Kirst, because you've obviously been following the weekend because Damien McKenzie didn't travel to Fiji.
You still had him in your fantasy team
I did.
as captain.
But as captain, costly. The difference, he was in Dunedin because they had the bye.
Yes.
And Artie went off at half time. So none of them
Big
will...
body of work in 40 minutes, though.
Great body of work, but none of them will add to their 1 point. And so therefore, we're going to have a 4-way leaderboard. And it is going to be none other than the superstar that is the Crusaders number 15, Will Jordan.
Untouchable in 40 minutes in Christchurch. Untouchable.
His ability to pop up, it's like if you're a first 5, second 5 or a halfback, it must be so good at the Crusaders because he obviously has a huge engine, will pop up for you and see things. And when I say see things, like most people when they say see things, they see a gap. He doesn't really need a gap. He needs an arm. Like he needs a half shoulder to get on him. And he's so strong through the hips and the quads that he can just get through it. He's our modern day Christian Cullen.
Well, this is where I was going to go to. He is untouchable when he is fit
Yes.
and playing his best.
Yes.
And that is what we saw in Christchurch on
But also
Sunday.
he's very dependent on what's going on in front of him. He needs the Crusaders to be playing well.
He does, but he's a creator.
Oh, yes.
And as you say, he just
Yep.
pops up in places and he makes things happen, which is what he was doing on the weekend. And it is special to watch. And then when you think about everyone growing up of a certain generation who their
Yep.
favourite player was, if it wasn't JONAH, it was Christian Cullen, who's
Yep.
the greatest fullback of all time.
Yes,
People start comparing these two and saying, well, Jordan is the modern day Christian Cullen.
he is.
Why? Give us some comparisons compare the two, because it's so hard to compare anyone to Christian Cullen, like it would be impossible to compare anyone to JONAH.
Yes. Your physique-wise, you're never going to have another JONAH. With those two, the similarities are their ability. We talked about Taumoefilau ability at full pace and change direction. Like Will Jordan is that on another level. Cullen was that. Cullen it looked like he was full steam, but then had this amazing swerve. And there's a bit of swerve about Will Jordan. He uses a swerve a lot more than just stepping. The other thing that he does, and a same that Cully used to do, is he could pop up in small channels and still break tackles and still get through. And I think that's why people sort of suggest there's the Cullenness, we just made up a word there, about how Will Jordan goes about his work. And the other thing we mentioned a couple of weeks ago, and we obviously at the time mentioned Will Jordan, We mentioned Mackenzie, Barrett, Finn Hurley after his wonderful performance against the Blues. When you're live at the ground and Will Jordan holds on to the ball for long enough for you to think he's going to have a run here, then you start to move forward in your seat.
Yeah.
Because you know that if he's seen something, there's probably not many defenders on the planet that have the ability to stop him through his pace, his strength, his vision. And the thing that I've noticed the Crusaders do is they've designed a few things around him. They've started to manufacture plays that look stock standard, but then, oh no, we've got a floating Will Jordan to come through the middle or sweep out the back of that. And that is when, if you're defending in those tight channels, because he does a lot of his damage close to rucks, if you're a forward in there,
nightmare,
and you see, if you see the 15's head pop up, you're not in a good place.
What are you thinking?
You're hoping that you can just be close enough to somebody else to say yours.
You got this one.
I'll get you inside. Yes, it wouldn't be pretty.
Oh, Will Jordan, JONAH's.
Yes.
Four-way tie.
What a competitive market we've got. I don't know how it compares to the unofficial official one that they're doing over there in Super Rugby land. But the
We'll
JONAH's,
get the list for you next week. We'll tell you how it compares.
But that's our leaderboard at the moment.
Coming up to week 5, and that takes us to our predictions. Now, let me just keep you posted. So, we obviously didn't do predictions for the first round of Super Rugby because the show started on the Tuesday after. So we're talking we're talking 3 rounds that Beaver and I have gone head to head on the predictions. I am leading.
Are you?
12-11. It's a 1-point ball game.
Damn you, Chiefs. Like, I knew they were going to lose last week.
Stop.
But I had to.
Yeah, well, this is
You're
is
a
real.
Chiefs girl. Jeez. Would you start backing your team?
Your credibility's on the line, just like it was when you came out last week and said that Kalen Ponga was coming to Super Rugby. We're yet to see a contract with the Hurricanes.
I know what I know.
And people were constantly in the comments section on the weekend saying, she's right. She's smashing him.
Were they using the word she, were they?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I'll have to look at these comments a bit harder.
Okay, so
yes.
round 5
Yep.
of Super Rugby and Super Rugby Opiki. We'll do Opiki first.
Yep.
Which you got, I think, both wrong last week. Matatu against the Blues. Blues. Chiefs against the Hurricanes Poa.
Yeah, Chiefs. I got both of them wrong because I backed the Chiefs last week, of course.
Chiefs for me as well.
Yes.
But that will be an interesting game. Men's.
Yep.
Highlanders, Hurricanes, down in Dunedin, Friday night.
Really awkward here.
Highlanders
really.
coming off a bye, Hurricanes coming off a loss. Guarantee you they don't put Cam Roigard on the bench this week.
No, incredibly awkward because I'm actually going to be spending Saturday with a couple of the assistant coaches with the Canes. But I'll be going.
Why?
I'm in Wellington.
Oh, you're in Wellington?
Yes.
For?
Homegrown. I've got
you're going to homegrown?
Sponsorship gig there. Need to go to just make
that
sure.
You have invited the Hurricanes coaching staff along to.
Well, when in Wellington, I always like
This
to
is why he's been practicing the chant, people.
When I'm in Wellington, I always like to have a beer
Hurricanes.
with WAP. And hopefully we can even get the CJ out too. But Landers for me.
This is such a tough one to pick. It's a really hard one to pick. Canes. They don't lose 2 weeks in a row. They need that one. It's the Hurricanes. Brumbies Drua. Brumbies coming off a high, coming off a night out in Auckland.
You've got to think about these things.
Yeah.
Drew are getting really, really close on their travels. Brumbies it's cold in Canberra.
I know.
Even
on Friday
in
night
March.
too. So I'll say Brumbies as well. Crusaders Force afternoon match in Christchurch. So
Brilliant.
once again, Sevu Reece, Will Jordan to have an absolute field day against the Force.
Great scheduling, by
Crusaders.
the way. Crusaders.
Chiefs Blues, the return match.
It's the
The
Chiefs.
Battle of the Bombays.
It's the Chiefs.
Again,
It's the
that
Chiefs.
will hurt the Blues. Chiefs win and beat them on their turf. Blues go down the road. And the bus trip.
The bus trip. I don't know if the Blues go down the night before. I think they're sick of hanging out in the town square of Vitron. So I think they're just coming in and hit and run missions these days. It'll be hostile. It'll be great to be there. Wish I was there.
I'll be there.
It'll be
Chiefs.
awesome.
Chiefs for me.
Chiefs for me. It'll be a great crowd. It'll be and let's hope the Blues, Beaver Blues, like Beaver villains come down. Crowd will be giving it to them. They fire up and make a great spectacle.
Damien McKenzie at 10 for the Chiefs. Pedal Feta at 10 for the Blues or 15?
I think you'll be 15.
Okay. Reds Waratahs.
Yeah,
Spicy, man.
Very spicy.
Very
Reds,
spicy.
Really disappointing last week by their standards.
Yeah. Have been wildly interrupted by the
Yes, of
cyclone in
course.
Queensland. We've seen a lot of the NRL matches moved. I wonder what happens to that match.
Well, and even things like training. Did they go straight back after Christchurch?
I don't know, but I'm going to say the Waratahs for this one. They stay unbeaten.
Is Joseph back?
I can't tell you that.
Hmm.
Do your own research.
Reds, Queenslander.
Is that the chant for them?
No, I think it's more passion, but I'm not from Queensland, so I can't bully more.
Okay, well, that'll separate us after round 5 of Super Rugby. Anything else you want to add on the aftermatch?
No, just all the best for the weekend, folks. Match of the round for me, Chiefs Blues.
Huge.
And I tell you what,
But if you see Beaver at homegrown on Saturday night,
working, dude, I just got to be better than last year.
what happened last year at homegrown?
Let myself down.
Oh, this was reminiscent of John Mitchell all over, except you didn't have
Well,
to
it
answer.
gets me.
You didn't have to answer to John Mitchell.
No, didn't have to lie.
Were those same Wellington Lions boys there leading you astray?
No, different. It was a different crew. Might have been the same assistant coach. Might have been leading me astray, but
Same again this weekend.
could possibly.
Look out, Courtney Place. Or maybe they don't leave from the waterfront.
I do know that good 2-4 down at Courtney Place. Fried chicken at about 2 o'clock in the morning. Looking forward to it.
Enjoy. Travel safe, and we'll see you next week.